It's the end of another month, which means it's the end of another reading month, and this month was the perfect month for reading. So without further ado, guys, here is my September wrap up. So funny thing about the fall months, for some reason I always skip October. When I recently put a post on Twitter about starting a bullet journal, either waiting for November or starting in the new year, I meant October. Like, I completely forgot about October. So I'm excited to be going into October because that means Thanksgiving and the fall season is in full-fledged. But before we get into October, I'm going to wrap up the books that I read in September. I read a total of 7 books this month. Most of those were 5-star ratings, and 5 out of the 7 books were audiobooks. I have a new addiction and a new love for audiobooks. But without further babbling, here are the books I read and the books I listened to this month. So the first book I listened to on audiobook was The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale. I picked this one up because of the cover change. This was a book that people have recommended to me so many times, but I haven't picked it up because the original covers were not very pretty and I didn't really like them at all. But when I saw that they had redone covers, I had to pick them up. Now, this is a story about a young girl who is going off to marry a foreign kingdom. Then she gets tricked by her lady servant and then becomes a goose girl in a foreign country and tries to win back her crown, her title, and who she is. While she's a goose girl, she meets a ragtag group of young people who are the animal keepers to this kingdom, and she ends up having this very loyal little following. I really enjoyed the magic system in this. It has a very elemental magic system. It gives nod to a creator or creation. It's not Christian fiction, nor is it overly religious in that way. You just have a creator type figure, as to most lores and fairy tales and stuff kind of do. So it wasn't anything religious in that way or Christian in that way at all. But a lot of the magical elements of this were very elemental, with animal speech, wind speech, and other types of languages that these type of things would have. Izzy does have this very small ability to speak to birds, and she discovers there's a lot more to her than she thought there was. I really enjoyed the elements of the story, the way it was written. I love the relationship buildings in this story. The romance was super, super cute and was just perfectly done. I just really enjoyed the innocence and just the adorableness of it, and just two people becoming friends and how it developed. I also really enjoyed the friendships and the relationships that were made out of this. I enjoyed some of the friendships more than I enjoyed the romance part of it. It was a really good all-around group of cast of characters that just made this story together. So a great cast of side characters, great cast of main characters, and a great, well-written fairy tale-esque story. Overall, I gave The Goose Girl a 5-star rating on Goodreads. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I am working my way through the rest of the books of Bay Erin as I have picked up Enna Burning, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit here. The next book I listened to was The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson. This is the second book in the Remnants Chronicles. I was recommended to this by a couple of friends, and I've been kind of going back and forth between how I feel about them. There's a really good development, a really good political aspect to the story. I won't go too much into the synopsis because it is the second book in a series, but this one gets a lot more political, and normally a political plot just kind of bores me, but this one was really intriguing and really well done. And again, another really well written cast of characters. I did like how the characters developed in this one. This one is a moderate content warning though. There's a lot of not so much innuendos, but hints into unfavorable characteristics towards women or relationships, and a lot more hints towards stuff happening with stuff not actually happening. So there's like ideas behind the type of lifestyles people live, if any of that makes sense. Like I said, if you guys have any questions about any content in any of my books that I review in my wrap-ups or reviews, you can leave those down below. But this one was a moderate one for me, as well as some of the violence and some of the languages, along with those hints of certain lifestyles. So like I said, if any of that is unclear, I'll answer any questions in the comments. Overall I gave this one a 3-star rating. It didn't really drive my attention. I wasn't really too sure how I felt about the love triangle that was going on, although it was a better, well-written love triangle, and I'm kind of enjoying it, but like I said, I'm not too sure how I feel about it overall, and at this point I don't care about either. dude. So again, it's one of those love triangles. As for a political book, like I said, normally they bore me. This one kept my interest, which is always good. And I really enjoy Mary E. Pearson's writing. She has a way of captivating and pulling you into a story. She definitely got me hooked into a political drama. You know, that's top marks for writing there, as well as I did read her Gemma Fox book, and I really enjoyed that. And her writing just pulls you right in. So the writing was definitely like a 4-star rating for me, although the other aspects of it kind of brought it down to a 5-star rating. The next book was also an audiobook, and this was recommended to me by my friend Felicia from the Little Prairie Library, and it's Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This one is a World War II novel, but it's set during the reign of Stalin and what happened to the people of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. And it follows 15-year-old Lena, her mother, her brother, and just what happens to her family during this time. I believe they are Lithuanian. I want to say Lithuanian, not Latvia. I believe they're from Lithuania. And honestly, this was a part of history I had no clue about, because most of my focus was on the German occupation and the German ally aspect of things, and I completely forgot about Stalin. To be honest, I completely forgot that Stalin was also during this time frame. I always kind of think it's a separate event in history, but some of the things that the reign of Stalin did to these people of these countries was just horrific. I think someone told me that Stalin might have killed more people than Hitler did, and that's also horrific. So just the terrible things that happened during this time period. Again, this is one of those content books that I always give a warning for World War II, because it deals with a lot of things. But this book does it in a way that respects the history and respects what the people went through and their struggles and their pain. Not so much makes it a entertainment factor. So I definitely want to warn you, there is slight sexual assault, but like I said, it's very slight, and just the way it was handled was very mature and opened you to what was going on historically. There is, of course, physical abuse, mental abuse, just horrific things that happened physically to these people, and they were basically reduced to being criminals and nobodies, the way they were treated by the Soviet Union. So we follow Lena and her family's trip to basically the Arctic Circle in Siberia. They are exiled to Siberia, and it's just one of those haunting reads as well. It was a really good group of characters. It was based on events from a family's life and journals, although I believe the characters themselves are made up. But it was, again, a really well done story, and I highly recommend it. I gave this one a 5-star rating as well. I always think it's slightly humorous between book nerds when you're like, oh, you need to read this book, it's amazing. And then you get back to your friend, it's like, this book is amazing, it destroyed my life. Like, it really did. And it did open my eye to new historical events, but really it was kind of an emotional mess. And we're just funny that way, I think. The next book I picked up was Maude by Melanie J. Fishburne. I am planning on doing a review of this one because it took me by complete surprise. I was going back and forth all summer of whether or not to pick this book up, and I finally decided to in September, and I fell in love with it. Maude is inspired by the real-life story of Ella Montgomery. It is a fictional story inspired by real-life events, so it's not following exactly how she would have felt, but it's just kind of the author interpreting it. But it was really well done. Ella Montgomery is the author of the Anne of Green Gables series, and it read like you were reading Anne of Green Gables. It was charming and enchanting, and because it's a Canadian set book by a Canadian author about a Canadian author, it was like reading about home. It made me feel warm and cozy, and I really enjoyed it. So if you're a huge fan of the Anne of Green Gables series, I really highly do recommend Maude, and I gave it a 5-star rating. The next book I read was a highly anticipated release, and that was A Dangerous Engagement by Melanie Dickerson. This is the third book in the Regency Spies of London series. Again, this is another series I wish I had reread the books previous, because I forgot Felicity was in all 3 books. But we're following Felicity's story, and she gets tangled up into some deadly games and some dastardly deeds, and we just follow another great espionage and spying type book. I really enjoy Melanie Dickerson's writings with these books. For some reason, they just are so captivating, and also the characters in these books. These are fantastic characters, and she has this great way of writing really swoon-worthy characters as well, and again, it was another well-written book from her. Felicity, as a merchant's daughter, doesn't really have a lot of prospects in life, and so when she gets this invitation to kind of this house summer party from an estranged aunt who isn't really technically related to them anymore, She decides to go and then finds out she is in way more over her head than she thought she would. She also meets a government agent, Philip McDowell, who is there undercover to kind of uncover what this group is going to do and what they're actually about. Both of them get tangled up in a fight for their lives. Not only that, but a fight to save their government and their country. Again, it was just beautifully well written, great fantastic characters, a great plot. I enjoyed the plot lines for her Regency Spy series almost more than I've been enjoying her medieval books now. And I like incorporating some of the aspects of Jane Austen, and just the way she writes the conversations kind of reminds me a bit of Jane Austen, and what I like about Jane Austen's books are the conversations. So I gave this one an obvious 5-star rating. It was also our Coffee Chapters and Christian YA book club pick for September. So we will be announcing a live show for that as soon as Melanie has read it, and we have a date for that because work is getting a little crazy, so I haven't quite set a date, but we will definitely announce on our social medias and our Goodreads group when the live show is going to take place, because I know you guys want a live show for this one and I want a live show for this one. The next book was also an audiobook listened to, and that was Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray. This is one of the Force Friday releases for the Journey to Star Wars The Last Jedi releases they had. I didn't even know this was on my radar. I saw it was released for Force Friday and I picked it up. And then my Instagram friend Joanna, I'll leave her links down below, she saw that I was getting this, or I saw that she was getting it, and we decided to buddy read it. I listened to it on audiobook, and you guys, if you want a fantastic audiobook, you need to listen to a Star Wars audiobook. You got sound effects, you got the movie soundtrack, fantastic narrators, and almost like kind of a acted out audiobook. It was so well done, and I thoroughly enjoyed the narrator for this one, as well as just having all of the tie-ins from the rest of the Star Wars universe. But this one basically is about a 16-year-old Leia kind of coming to age and kind of proving herself to become crowned Princess of Alderaan, as it is a matriarchy-reigned society that I'm aware of. I don't really know a whole lot about the planetary systems or just the overall outside lore outside of the main movies about Star Wars. So from what I could gather from this book, it is a matriarchy planet, and Leia was the next in line for the throne. While Leia is going through all of these coming of age and her working to prove herself to become Crown Princess of Alderaan, a lot of things starts happening that really connects to it connects to the prequel trilogy, it connects to the original trilogy, and even connects to Rogue One, and just the way the little connections happen. I was fangirling the entire time I was reading this, because I'd be reading and it would get to a point and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where this happens, or this is where this is from, or something that happens. It was just so well written and a really good story. This has a very mild content rating for some language, but I believe the author kept it in the same kind of tone as the movies. And as well, I think she stayed relatively true to the character of Leia as portrayed by Carrie Fisher. I really felt like I was reading about a younger Leia from the movies, so I really did like that. There's some differences in characteristics for Leia, but you started to see how she developed, how these characteristics develop into the Leia we know from the movies. Overall, I gave it a 5-star rating. Just the joy of listening to this one on audiobook was so much an enjoyable experience, and then it just made the book overall a standout read for me this month. It's probably one of my favorite books I listened to this month and / read this month. The last book I finished this month was also an audiobook, and that was Enna Burning by Shannon Hale. This is the second book in the books of Bayern, and this follows Izzy's friend from the first book, Enna. And from the title, Enna is dealing with the language of fire and fire speak. In this time, Bayern is leading into war, and Enna is trying to fight to save her country, as well as save her brother, and kind of who she is becoming in these turbulent times. This one was a lot darker than the Goose Girl. I found there's a lot more things in here. I'd give this more of a moderate content rating for some aspects. There is some leering and some unsavory actions towards Enna at one point in the book. Nothing comes of it, but there's just a little bit of content warning for that, and just a bit more darker elements. And this one character was just kind of a very seductive character in some ways, just with the way he speaks and stuff, and just kind of poisoning towards Enna. It was a very unhealthy relationship there, but you see the kind of seduction that was taking place, so I kind of give a content warning for that, because it got a little dark around that way. And as well, it got a little more interesting with the magic systems, kind of becoming almost a religious system as well. At one point, Enna and Izzy are trying to discover what is really going on with these kind of elemental powers. So there's a bit of a different content and switch to the book with that. Overall, I gave it a 4-star rating just because some of those elements took it down for me there. However, the characters were still there. There's some side characters from the first book. The romance in here is also super cute, and then continuing on Izzy's story a bit more from the first book as well. So continuing on the relationships from there was really well done, as well as Shannon Hale's writing is just really captivating, and it was just a really fantastical read and a great fairy tale-ish story. I'm not too sure what type of a retelling this was supposed to be, or if it's just its own type of separate story. But if you guys know if there's a fairy tale connected to this, let me know in the comments below. I'd like to know more about it. So those are all of the books I read in the month of September. I am planning on doing some full reviews for some of these books. If there's ones that you particularly want to see, let me know in the comments below. I'll try to work that into my schedule. And again, if you guys have any questions about any of the content or just anything about these books, I'll answer them as best as I can. Also, let me know what your guys' favorite book of September was. Like I said, mine was definitely Leia, Princess of Alderaan. It was a fantastic listening experience, and it was one that I was kind of apprehensive about picking up because I did not like Claudia Gray's first Star Wars book, but I was really happy I picked up Leia. So let me know what your guys' favorite book for September was. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!